Round about here is where the actual grave of Sultan Suleiman was. Today it's just some random guy's garden. I think I'm trespassing. Buried in two places at once, Istanbul and here, a rural village in the Central European nation bordering Ukraine. In the fields, in the silence, one of the greatest Ottoman sultans to have ever lived, buried in someone's back garden. Sultan Suleiman. The Ottomans stretched across continents from Africa to Europe, but in Hungary the remains are all but gone. In this third and last episode of this series, I trace the final footsteps of the Islamic rule in the Central European nation of Hungary. A story of how the Muslims lost, how an Ottoman Sultan came to be buried thousands of miles away from home, and how a once up-and-coming Muslim civilization in Hungary was lost to time. (1686), the beginning of the end. The Holy War, the Great Turkish War. In this fight, the Ottomans suffered their greatest setback in Europe yet. A coalition of crusader-like forces had amassed all they had to defeat the Muslim forces once and for all, and with the Ottoman front lines already in steady decline, after decades of stagnation, the borderlands of Islam were overrun. These lands would be lost forever. Famous cities like Sarajevo and Novi Pazar were sacked, including Budapest. Not even babies in their mothers' wombs were spared. All were sent to their deaths. I was quite horrified by what was done here. Men were far more cruel to each other than the wild beasts. Naked children were spitted and flung over the city walls. The imperial troops threw the dead bodies of the Turks and Jews into the Danube. Violence was not just directed against the Muslims, but likewise against the Jewish population. We will destroy everything by sword and fire. We won't even spare a child in its mother's womb. According to many Ottoman sources like Evliya Çelebi, that there was about 47 small mosques and like 27 larger mosques, but in total in Buda there was 67 mosques. There were 3 Turbes and there were about 5 dervish monasteries. And today there are a whopping number of 0 mosques that remain here in the city of Buda. And after the Ottomans were forced out, all of that was erased and removed from memory. But before Budapest was besieged, the Christian Holy League had penetrated the Ottoman Empire's first line of defense, a small military outpost called Szekesfehervar. Bismillah. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Szekesfehervar here in northern Hungary. This is an Ottoman kula, a stone tower. It was this very castle which the Ottomans would use as an outpost base, the first line of defense for the Ottoman Empire. And it was here where Evliya Çelebi in the 1660s, Evliya Çelebi has been everywhere, no matter where I've been in Hungary and across the former Ottoman lands. He described this place to be a frontier, a line of defense, which would relay any information of any Habsburg troop movement in the north, and they would relay that information to the rest of the Ottoman Balkans to prepare them for any impending advance. Unfortunately, like many of the Muslim Ottoman heritage here in Hungary, it's left in ruins and it's derelict and it's also closed. But most likely there would have been a mosque in this vicinity, and today there's nothing here. It's just flat fields, because wherever the Ottomans built a castle or a fortress or a neighborhood, they would of course always build a mosque to accompany it. That was their tradition, to always bring Islam wherever they went. Had this place not had an Ottoman kula, I don't think I would be interested in actually visiting this random, what is this, Szekesfehervar? What even is that? Wow. Take a look at this. ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Their graves are the most furthest northern any kingdom or any caliphate ever reached. So this is a symbolic Ottoman grave. Actually, it was built by the Hungarians in mutual respect for their adversaries. And what interesting detail they've put is that you can see two swords. That is traditional for Ottoman graves of people who are shaheed or ghazi, which are soldiers, warriors. And you can imagine the warriors and the fighters who would have been here. What an interesting detail. And here I am, Allah has brought me all the way here just to give a little bit of dhikr on their behalf and dua. Before we resume the hunt, my name is Harris, a young journalist and researcher, documenting the traces of Muslims across the world. If you want to see more work like this, be sure to tap the like and subscribe button so you won't miss out on the future series. To support the non-profit journalist work, consider purchasing the ultimate Bosnian itinerary guide I have compiled over the last 3 years of being a reporter. All the proceeds will go back into this work. All the links can be found in the comments and the bio. And after my quick pit stop at Szekesfehervar, my journey wouldn't take me south just yet. I had to go a little bit north. There was one more location that I was alerted of, one of Islam's most monumental victories, the city of Esztergom. But check this out behind me. That looks like it's some sort of Ottoman ruins. The Ottomans had a very particular style of making their arches. Put all the bricks together without needing any glue or nails or anything. But I had not come all the way to the northern very tip of Hungary to see some dilapidated building, nor for that fact a huge castle which dated to the Ottoman times. No, because I was here to find something much rarer. Oh, it's here. I'm looking at it. This is the last surviving northernmost mosque that the Ottomans had ever built, overlooking Central Europe, because beyond that river there is Slovakia. This mosque was built as a symbol of the Ottoman power. It was the pinnacle of the height of the Ottoman Empire. Almost as if this minaret, although fractured and broken and lonely, is in standoff with the rest of Europe, overlooking it with jealousy. This mosque sadly was left ruined after the Ottomans had left and fled, as well as the Muslims expelled. But Sultan Suleiman had entered this city in the 1540s. Legend has it at this very location and where the mosque would later be built. And so this behind me is the very gate in which Sultan Suleiman in 1540s would have walked through triumphantly as he takes the city of Esztergom. And in honor of him and his victory, they built him a victory plate which can still be read to this day. And it reads, "To Sultan Suleiman, son of Selim Khan," and some other stuff that I can't read. And this mosque would be built over it as a way of showing the Ottoman might and the grandeur that they have reached to the depths of Central Europe. Across the river is Slovakia and the steppes of Europe. It was built in the 1600s by Haji Ibrahim. Of course, he's a Haji, he's been to Mecca, he's someone who's well traveled, and his legacy has still remained to this day. Now, even though the Ottomans were kicked out, this place became a granary. People used to store foods and other resources in here. It was forgotten, it was derelict, it was crumbling, until the last 100 years when a German guy wanted to buy this property and he wanted to make it into an apartment block. However, upon investigation, he realized something, that this wasn't just any ordinary building. This was very rare. The ruins of a 400-year-old mosque. The hunt had thus far already led me to uncover the empire's deep, lasting influence on this land, from minarets to hammams, relics of mosques, and the graves of pious predecessors. But now, after months of journeying through time and place, all roads would lead here, to Szigetvár, the final footsteps of one of the greatest leaders of human history, Suleiman the Magnificent. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Szigetvár. our first stop is a mosque. This behind me was the Ali Pasha Mosque. It was built in 1589 as part of the Ottoman conquest in this region, in this land. It was built after Sultan Suleiman had passed away. But of course, as the Ottomans were kicked out of this entire region, it was converted into a Catholic church. The mosque was damaged, and also the tomb of Ali Pasha was also desecrated and completely erased. Inside is almost identical to what an Ottoman mosque would look like, but of course it has been sort of changed. The minaret was also demolished. So as we approach this former mosque, you can notice the Ottoman-esque architecture. We actually have a plaque. I'm going to read the plaque out to you. It's in Hungarian. This mosque was built by Ali Pasha in 1589, combined and restored. There you go. So that is confirmation that this indeed was a mosque. It goes to show the Ottomans were very clever in how they made their mosques. Of course, I don't know whether the city centre was developed around this mosque or this mosque was placed in the city centre. But you can imagine with all Ottoman mosques you'd have a graveyard for all the scholars and the architects in the mosque, and you can imagine this being one of the graveyards. I mean, everyone goes to the page and sort of forgets that this was also another mosque, a grand mosque. You can notice that from, of course, the arches, very famous, distinct Ottoman style of windows as well. What is your name? Name. My name is Harris. Your name is?
Gigi.
Hungry good or hungry bad?
Igen,
Good, bad?
good bad.
Good. That's what I love. Friendly people, nice. Talking to friendly people. My camera's being buggy today. Here we actually have a very rare monument. This is actually Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. Get to the chopper now. He's grown a mustache, hasn't he? I don't know, it looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Shut up. These fellas have already got the trenches being made for World War III, it seems like. Anyway, we're gonna make our way to the second mosque. Yes, second mosque. So people may ask, why on earth did the Ottomans need Szigetvár, this city that I'm in? It was a line of defense against Vienna. And so the Ottomans needed to take the city in order to bring it under their control and strengthen the defense against the Habsburg Empire. So the Ottomans launched a campaign in 1566. And so when the Ottomans came and they conquered this land, they built tons of mosques and they also converted some into churches. But this land is beautiful. I mean, look at the river. That is the church that we went before. So approximately 100 mosques were enlisted under the direct authority of the Caliphate or the Sultanate. That mosque would be named after the particular Sultan. And of course, as Sultan Suleiman was one of the leading figures in the conquest of Hungary, in total, in the entirety of Hungary during the Ottoman rule, there was about at least 300, 400 mosques. So you'll see Sultan Suleiman mosques in and scattered across Hungary. You can imagine this place was a castle. So in this castle compound, they built a mosque after Sultan Suleiman. Apparently, there it is. Wow, it seems like just an ordinary house, this, but it's not. It's a mosque that was dedicated to Sultan Suleiman. Like I said, this just looks like a normal, ordinary house. But if you notice very clearly, you can see a distinct shape of what once was a minaret. So this was built in the 1500s, and over time, like many of the mosques, it fell into disrepair and it fell into ruins. And apparently this is a case with all of the minarets for somehow, but it was actually hit by lightning strike, and the minaret sort of collapsed and it was just left like that. And so when they did some restoration works, they sort of left the minaret as it were. But you can imagine how tall the minaret would have been, and it looks like a beautiful, lavish building. And once again, you can see the famous Ottoman windows, very distinct Ottoman Islamic architecture here. That is incredible. I'm just going to take that in. Oof. And that is not something you see every day. You know, I see a lot of Ottoman mosques, but not here in Hungary, and this is something very, very special indeed. You can imagine here in the courtyard would have been the graves, I do presume. I'm not going to stand in there in case there are actually graves there. I'm going to go inside, see what we can see really. Ajib. Wow. This is, I always say this, but this is just so Ottoman. It's like I'm walking into a mosque, because it is a mosque. This is truly remarkable. In a way, I don't feel right being here with my shoes and wow. That would have been the women's section where the women would pray. Hopefully we can get access up to there. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. إن المسلمين والمسلمات والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والقانتين والقانتات والصادقين. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Mosque of Sultan Suleiman. Those were the last surviving examples of mosques in Szigetvár. I then set out on foot a few kilometers to the north, to an open park seemingly in the middle of nowhere. This, my friends, is both where the story of the Ottomans and Hungary begin and also end. The symbolic resting place of Suleiman. Today, it is known as the Turkish and Hungarian Friendship Park. Historians suggest that it was these very grounds in which Sultan Suleiman would place his tent for the last time. The Ottoman army would be camped on this side of Szigetvár, and it would be this very place in which Sultan Suleiman would pass away. He took the flag of Islam, the standard of the Ottomans, and he went as far as he could. This is as far as he got. Now, there is a catch to this story that I haven't told you yet. This wasn't actually the place in which Sultan Suleiman's organs were buried. This is only symbolic. The actual location of his internal organs were buried elsewhere in a place shrouded in mystery, to the extent that Suleiman's death was only announced 48 days after his death. The Grand Vizier had chosen to do this to protect Sultan Suleiman's body from being captured and defiled, as the Austrians were tracking his every step, and to safely transport it back to Istanbul, the internal organs had to be taken out, leaving me a far more arduous task of locating the very soil which Sultan Suleiman's heart lies in. This would prove to be the hardest part of my hunt yet. I would spend the next half of the day driving through the winding hills, the plain fields, and the narrow dirt tracks in search of our Sultan.
I'm driving now to a location where many suspect it to be the place.
And it's here somewhere. I'm literally trespassing. It might even just be here. We might have patched it up already because this is someone's property. It's pretty hard to tell and show you here, but actually round about here is where the actual grave of Sultan Suleiman was. Today it's just some random guy's garden. I think I'm trespassing. But it was here where they excavated the original tomb of Sultan Suleiman, in which there was a church nearby, and I believe the church was built on top, and they named it Turbes or something because of it was a tomb in honor. The castle and the mosque and everything once used to be here, very like literally where I'm standing. Today it's all yeah, they've patched it all up today. The castle used to be exactly where I am now. Imagine, a Sultan of the Ottoman Empire was buried exactly here, in the middle of completely nowhere. There's no marking, there's no sign, but there was a mosque and a castle, and one of the greatest sultans of the Ottoman Empire buried here. If it was any other person of history, figure of history, they would have been remembered with plaques and statues. But today, in the middle of nowhere, in this random village somewhere, far away, tucked away in the town of Szigetvár, or even if this is even a village, our Sultan Suleiman was buried here. That was really sad, actually. Very sad. It was 1566, and despite his old age, Suleiman would embark on a campaign here in Szekesfehervar. But this time it would be his last. Mere hours before the news of the Muslim triumph had reached, Suleiman departed from this world and the very territory he had devoted his life to. Suleiman the Great, the Magnificent, had left his heart behind in Hungary, both physically and symbolically. After journeying across the south of Hungary over the course of the week, my hunt for Hungary's Muslim kingdom would bring me back to the capital. There was one final vestige, one that would prove to be one of the most surprising of all. The year was 1686, the beginning of the end for what once was Ottoman Hungary. The Catholic Christian Holy League, as it was called, one of the last unofficial crusades to be waged against the Muslims, was unleashed upon the Muslims of Europe. Budapest was besieged, it was relentlessly bombarded with cannon fire. The whole surroundings around me would have been burnt in an inferno, minarets crashing down to the floor, cannon fire whizzing through the skies. It would be a scene from Doomsday. And after weeks of fighting, despite the unlikeliness of a Muslim victory, the Grand Vizier of Budapest would fight desperately, holding on to what once was a dream, now a nightmare. The monument you see behind me was actually erected by a non-Muslim hundreds of years after the Ottomans were kicked out of the region. They say that this is the location in which Abdurrahman Arnavut Pasha took his last breaths. This was erected by a descendant of one of the Catholic Holy League soldiers. the same soldier who was fighting against the Ottomans. This is what they put.
The words Rahmatullah alayh, may God have mercy on his soul.
And so, on the afternoon of August 2nd, 1686, Budapest's last Muslim vizier, Abdurrahman Arnaut, took his last breaths here on the hills of Buda Castle. And just like that, Ottoman Hungary was no more.
في ليال كتمت سر الهوى بالدجى لولا شموس الغراب.